Do you love drawing characters or scenes, but then you struggle with backgrounds? Well, I'm sharing quick tips for creating stunning backgrounds that are super quick and easy to make, using different tools in Procreate that you might not have tried yet. Hi there, welcome to Haley K Studio. I'm Haley and I like to make Procreate tutorials for beginners, and today I'm focused on creating backgrounds. If you're like me and you lose your creative steam once it comes to creating your background, these quick tips will help you create stunning backgrounds with very little effort. I'm going to share 4 different illustrations using 4 different methods for backgrounds to give you some variety to choose from, and we're just going to be using Procreate's built-in tools and brushes for these effects. So let's get started and make some beautiful backgrounds. So the first background that I wanted to share is just creating a simple gradient background. This is a very simple picture that we're working on here, just to show you how easy and quick it can be to create a beautiful background, even on these very simple images. So this is just a canyon scene, sort of like the canyon scene that I created for my lasso tool video, and I will link that one down below. That one's a really fun one too. I'm just using that same subject matter to share this concept now. And so I have a simple canyon scene here. Here's my sky, my sun, and my canyons, and a little kind of like river in between. And the first thing I want to do is create a beautiful background sky. We're just going to select the sky layer that I created. It is just this dark rose color. And I'm going to use the Canyon Sunset color palette that I created. And I will link this down below if you'd like to have this color palette. So we're just going to create a gradient. And I'm going to start off by choosing the soft brush from the airbrushing tab. And I have set it to 10% and bring it down to 80% opacity. And I'm just going to select this lighter orangey pink, and I'm just going to create just a line going across. And then I will choose a lighter color, so like this lighter peachy color, and go across. And then I will choose another light color and go across. And so it has created a sort of hazy sky. So what I'd like to do is create a smoother gradient. So I'm going to go to Adjustments and then Gaussian Blur, and then I'll blur that up. And now it creates a very smooth gradient, kind of what you would expect to see with a sunset. And I'm just going to add a few more details. We'll add a gradient to the river here. So I'll select the layer that goes in between these canyons. And I will start off with a darker color, so we'll kind of go backwards. So I will go across with the darkest color, then choose a lighter color, and then keep going up the spectrum of dark to light. And there is our rough gradient. We'll go to Adjustments and then Gaussian Blur and blur that up. And it kind of blends in nicely with the sun. I think that's very pretty. And we've got a pretty river in between our canyons. I'm just going to add a few more details to this picture just to add a little bit more interest to it. So on these canyons, I'm going to create a little bit of a lighting effect to show that there is some depth to these canyons. I'll select my backmost layer of canyons and I will turn on the alpha lock. I want to choose my lightest color and then go to my selector tool. And I am just going to select a portion of it. And with that airbrush tool, I'm just going to add a little bit of airbrushing, and I'll turn off that selector and you can see how it's added a pretty lighting effect there. And I'm just going to go through and add that to the rest of my canyons. And make sure that you turn on that alpha lock so it stays within the bounds of that canyon. So now we have a very simple canyon scene. It blends in really beautifully, and it's a simple way to create a beautiful background that takes no time at all. So one area where I struggle a lot is knowing how to make a background for when I make like a storybook character. This is actually my son Harrison in storybook style, and I thought he would be the perfect subject for this next illustration. So whenever I'm making a background, I tend to lose a lot of patience with myself and I lose a lot of precision. So the trick for me is to using brushes that are going to do some of the work for me and create the effects that precise drawing and illustrating wood. These are the brushes I like to use to achieve that, but don't take a whole lot of precision and time and patience. So I have my illustration of Harrison, and I've added a solid color for the background, and I have a bit of grass beneath him, but he needs more stuff around him. He needs some texture and he needs some depth. I'm going to add a layer above my sky layer, and I just have this color palette here of different colors that I created for these backgrounds, and I'm going to choose this very light blue. The next brush I'm going to showcase for using backgrounds is under painting and fresco. Fresco is really great because it's a very watery brush and there's a bit of transparency to it, but it's great when you layer it. It will lose some of that transparency. I'm going to be using this one for this next part. So for the sky, I've got the fresco selected. I'm going to size it up to 40%, and I'm going to turn the opacity down to 65%, just for this first layer of sky texture that I want to make. So I'm just going to add a bit of, it's kind of like a haze, it's kind of like a fog, it's kind of like clouds, and you can see the texture there. And then I will choose my next color and I will add a little bit more texture, just make some dabs here and there and some circle motions. The more you hold it down, the more it's going to make kind of these cloud shapes for you. And then I will choose this darker turquoise, and I'm going to turn down the size to 20, and I'm just going to create some darker clouds, and then I will turn it down even lower to 5%, still with that same turquoise color selected, and I will add a little bit more texture to the clouds. So that's a pretty easy sky to create. You can add as many layers as you want to this, but we're going to add some more details to the background, so I'm not going to worry too much about the sky. The next thing I want to do is sort of frame my character here, so I'm going to add a new layer above that sky layer. I'm going to choose a very dark brown, and for the trees that I want to use to frame my character, I'm going to go to the dry ink brush. So I have it set to 70%, and I'm just going to create some framing trees. So this kind of has some fall vibes, so there's not going to be leaves on these trees. All the leaves have fallen off, so it's okay if they are just blank without any leaves, but I do want to add some texture to the bark. So I will turn on alpha lock and I will choose this lighter brown, and I'm going to go back to the fresco brush. So that's under painting and fresco, and set to that 5% is perfect. I'm just going to add some texture to the trees. It takes no time at all, and it creates some very beautiful texture with that fresco brush. So I'm going to add a few more details behind them. So I will add a layer above my trees here, and I'm going to choose this green, and I'll have that fresco brush, and I'm going to turn it back up to 20%, and then the opacity I'm going to set to 100%. I'm just going to create some pretty bushes behind him, and I'm going to keep layering that fresco brush so it's not too transparent. A little bit of transparency is okay, but not too much. So now he's got even more to the background that is framing him out. And now we can add the details that are more in the foreground, closer to our character. And to do that, so I have my grass layer here, and I want this next set of bushes to be on top of that grass, so I will need to add a layer above the grass. And I first want to start off with this orange color. I'm going to use the same size, the 20%, and the 100% opacity, and just add some bushes around him, and just keep layering so that we don't see too much of the trees behind them. And just small circles is all you really need to do. And now we've got some really pretty orange bushes surrounding him. And now I'll do one more layer of bushes, and I'm going to choose this sort of olive green color, and they're just going to go in front of these orange bushes. So that's looking pretty good. Now I just want to add a little bit of more texture and visual interest to this. I don't want to do too much because I do want to keep this brief, and I'm going to add a new layer above all of my bushes, and we're going to use this layer for the background and some of the foreground. Keeping this layer separate isn't necessary. So first I'm going to choose this sort of peachy orange color, and I'm going back to my dry ink brush, and I'm going to keep it to that 70% size. I'm just going to add some big orange leaves here and there to let you know that it is fall and the leaves have changed color. And they're very abstract leaves, and that is what we're going for, because these are very abstract bushes. And now I'm going to choose this yellow color and just add some more interest behind him. So here's our storybook character. He's got a really pretty background. It fits in with that storybook style, and it took no time at all to create. So here's what he looked like before and then after we created his background. The next sort of background I wanted to show you for these storybook characters is kind of like a simple graphic background. And I have this next character that I made. This is my 10-year-old son, Donnie. I thought this really fit him, although it is terribly inaccurate because he will never wear a sweatshirt and there's absolutely no way he's not wearing shorts. So sorry for the inaccuracy of this character, but I like the way it looked. The first thing I want to do, I have all of my storybook character layers in one group, and I'm going to add a new layer, and I'm just going to put it to the bottom. I'm going to choose from the same color palette that I used for my last storybook character, just for some continuity, and I didn't want to offend my kids by using colors that they wouldn't like, so I'm sticking with this safe color palette that I don't think they'll be offended that I used. I'm just going to go to the sketching tab of my brush library. I'm going to grab the monoline brush. I'm just going to set the brush to 20%, and I'm going to create a circle around him. I've created an ellipse, and then I'll hold it down so it creates a perfect circle. Place that centered to my character, and then I will drag and drop the color to just fill the entire circle. And I want to add some texture to this circle so that it fits in better with the style of my image. So I'm going to go back to my brush library, and under the painting tab, I'm going to grab the turpentine brush. And I have set this to 5%, and I'm just going to create an edge to this circle to give it a little bit more visual interest. And this brush is really cool because it kind of has a blending quality to it. And there we've created a textured edge to make our circle seem a little less boring. I want to add some more texture to the center of it, so I'm going to add a new layer above that circle, and I'm going to turn on the clipping mask, and I'm going to use the same color, but I'm going to change the blending mode to soft light. And the next brush I'm going to use is under charcoals, and it's burnt tree. And so I've just added a bit of texture to this circle. You can add as much or as little texture that you want, but I'm happy with how that looks. When creating these sort of graphic, simple backgrounds, you want to think about how much detail you want to add to it. Donnie is a really straightforward guy. He spends a lot of time playing basketball, and when I think about Donnie, I think about walks to our local school playground, and that just entails a lot of sidewalks and a lot of concrete. So I just wanted to create a simple concrete ground for him to stand on. So I'm going to add a new layer above my circle, and I'm going to choose this gray color for some concrete. And the next brush that I want to use is this charcoal block. This one is great as well, and I've set the size to 5%, and I'm just going to create a bit of sidewalk for him. And this is going to be very minimal, and it's not going to be a complete sidewalk. It's just going to be a partial sidewalk. And if it's a little crooked, you can always just tilt it back to where it looks like a straight line for you. So there's our concrete, and I want to add a few more details to that. So I'm going to add a layer above it, and then turn on a clipping mask, and I'm going to choose a black. And with this same charcoal block brush, I'm just going to turn it all the way down to 1%. I'm going to keep my pencil straight up and down so that it doesn't start smudging. With a little bit of perspective, I'm just going to add some cracks to the sidewalk. And now I just want to add a few more details. And like I mentioned, you really want to think about your subject, and keeping in mind our walks to the local school. There's tons of dandelions everywhere. I don't want to add too much around him. I'm just going to add a few small, simple details. So I've just added a little bit of texture to the concrete with that burnt tree again, and then with my dry ink brush I just added some dandelion weeds in the cracks of the sidewalk, and that's all my image really needs. It's simple, it's just like the characteristics of my actual character. It took no time to make, and all we used were the brushes that are built into Procreate. So here's my character before, and here's his after. So now I wanted to share my tips for creating a kawaii doodly style background. So you have your kawaii character or your kawaii image that you made, and creating a background for that is the simplest thing that you can do. It's one of my favorite types of art because it is so simple and it doesn't take a whole lot of precision. Roughness and imperfections is great for kawaii style art. That's probably why I love it so much. So I've just got this cute little penguin. He's gotten hit with a snowball, and I want to add a background for him. So if you have a tough time deciding what color you want for the background of your image, most of the time you can just take from a detail from inside the actual subject matter, and there's not a whole lot to the color to the subject matter, but the least amount of color that I used is this orange. And I think it would make a great background to this. So I'm going to add a new layer, and I'm going to put it below my penguin layer. I'm going to be choosing from my Kawaii color palette that comes with my Kawaii Essentials brush set and drawing kit. And I'll link that below if you would like to purchase that. But any color palette that you use will just work just fine. So I've added this same orange that I have on his feet and his little beak as my background. And now I want to add some doodly details to the background. So I'm going to choose my brown, and I'm just going to use the monoline brush for that again. And I have one here that I edited to change the streamlines so the stabilization is a little bit nicer for me. I'm going to set the size to 30%. And I'm just going to add some clouds and some snow. So again, thinking about your subject matter and what would make sense for any surrounding doodles that you can make. It's a little penguin. He's been hit by a snowball. So I'm just going to add some little snow clouds. So there I've added some snow clouds, and I just dragged and dropped my white into each of those shapes. I'm not going to be adding any shadow to this part, so I didn't have to do this in layers. So I just filled each of those with white, and that is all is needed for those clouds. But we still need a little bit more visual interest in adding doodly illustrations to kawaii art. You can do shines and stars and squiggles, all sorts of stuff. And I'm going to keep it kind of simple. I'm going to add another layer, and I'm just going to add some of these little shine marks. And I'm going to add 3 little lines right here to really show that that snowball just hit him in the face and really kind of highlight that area. And the last thing I want to do is to add a simple grid to the background. And I love adding a grid to kawaii illustrations, and it's really easy with just a built-in brush that's already in Procreate. I'm going to add a layer above my orange, and I'm going to textures, and then there's a grid brush right here. It's already made for you. I do go into the grain and I scale it up quite a bit. So I've scaled it up to 55%, and I'm just going to create the grid like that. And the entire grid has been drawn for you. And I'm just going to turn down the opacity a little bit. You can kind of see it against my shine marks a little bit more easily. And there's our kawaii illustration all done, and it was really simple and easy, and not worrying too much and just kind of having fun with the background is all you need. So here's what our little guy looked like before, and there he is with our kawaii doodly style background. Now that we've discovered the built-in tools that will help us create backgrounds, you'll also want to try the other built-in tools Procreate has. So click on the link in screen to watch more of my videos focusing on all of Procreate's best built-in tools so that you can master Procreate without having to buy anything extra. So thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit that thumbs up button. And if you want to watch more videos like this one, hit that subscribe. And I hope to see you here for my next tutorial. Bye!